Do you ever find yourself living in such a way that doesn't actually reflect who you want to be or who you think you are? Well, that is exactly what we talk about on today's podcast episode with my guest, Scott Gazzoli, who is the founder and the host of the Causing the Effect podcast, which I was actually on a couple weeks ago. Yeah, it's an awesome conversation today. I'm a little bit more laid back than usual, so you guys should really enjoy that, get to see a little bit more of my personality. But I really liked talking with Scott specifically because there were a lot of insights about identity and being who you really are. So without further ado, let's hop into today's show. And as always, there's the announcement. I would like to invite you guys to go to ourrescue.org to get to know my favorite nonprofit organization, Operation Underground Railroad. What they do is they go undercover to rescue kids from sex trafficking, which we all know is a terrible, terrible thing. But Operation Underground Railroad is a light in the darkness. So go to ourrescue.org, just learn about what they do and get involved. But now, without further ado, let's go and do some hard things because today we are overcoming average. All right, well, thank you for coming on the Hard Thing podcast, Scott. I'm happy to have you here and have you on the other side of this mic rather than being the interviewer. You are the interviewee. So welcome to my show.
Thank you so much, man. I'm glad to be here. What's doing, brother? I'm hyped, man. I'm hyped.
Heck yeah. Well, I have a tradition here. Every guest I ask, what's the hardest thing you've ever done? And that's how we start off the show. So, Scott, what's the hardest thing you've ever done?
Oh, man. So I got a couple. The hardest thing I've ever done is getting a divorce, to be honest with you. And I think, there's really just the reason is there's not a real answer to like you did the right thing or the wrong thing. And that's when one of my mentors, he told me that he's like, once you start thinking about it, like this deep in and you're fighting for months at a time, like you're going to regret one way or the other by this point because you just don't know. And that kind of gave me some relief. I was like, oh, this is just, I'm going to be regardless. So that was, I would say that was the most recent and just the hardest thing. Obviously, you're in love with somebody 10 years, you build a house together, you go through everything, $500,000 wedding, and you think on paper, it sounded great. And that was, I think to add to that, like the hardest thing was becoming the truest version of myself, which is kind of like my mantra and like what I do. And I think that was the hardest thing. But at the other side of it was podcasting with Justin. There's my podcast. There's so many good things happening that I think you kind of have to go through that, Justin.
Yeah, it definitely turns you into someone else, and you wouldn't be able to do the things that you are without those hard things. So I'd like to dig into some of those answers, and I'm guessing you still have some other hard things as well. But you said a $5 million divorce. I'm curious as to how that came about, because I'm from Utah. We come from the land of, really, really cheap weddings generally. So tell me, how did that 500 million, or wait, I don't know.
$500,000 wedding is what
I'm
Justin's saying. I got you, man. I got you. So listen, dude, I would say that I am more of a Justin vibe. I'm chill. I would want to get married on the beach with 20 people, but I understand in relationships, you give the girl what they want. And, all my ex-wife and most of the girls I date, they want that perfect wedding. So I really, that's kind of the way I look at relationships, right? It's not about like, I need this and then you have to do that. It's more like, what do you need to get yourself to your happiest state so you don't bust my balls, A? And then how do you get me to what I need? And I know a big thing for her was a big surprise proposal, which flew to Naples, Italy. Flew my family there, flew her family there, did the whole thing, Justin.
Wow. What part of Naples?
I can't even tell you by this point. I think I blacked out that part of my life. But it was a big ring, dude. It felt good on paper, right? It really it just, I was like listening to everybody too much. I was like, this kind of feels a little off. I don't know if we're gonna line up. And anybody who's thinking about making the big jump or whatever, just make sure you live with the person first. That was my big mistake. But you do that. You buy a 4.5 carat ring and you're going through this whole thing, Justin. And, you're just like a normal wedding in New York will cost you $100,000. And before even friends with families, it was 200, 800 people. Oh my gosh. I got my people. Yeah. She was actually she wasn't as popular as me. I had like 200 friends off and we were like, yo, you have to get these people off. So 500 people, astronaut, I think per head, at the wedding was $400 per head. So 400 times 500, you're at 200K without blinking. And ridiculous. It was crazy. And I highly suggest, like, not worth it. Just because I could have bought that. We could have put all the money into the house, right? But listen, I really was I should have spoke up more, and now I speak up too much, sadly enough, for my current girlfriend Jessica. So, I'm just kind of trying to find this balancing act, man.
That makes sense. It's a funny thing that you said, 500,000. I'm getting the number right now. Yeah. When I went to BYU, Brigham Young University, and
nice.
They shared a study that they did there, and the school's more religiously inclined, so obviously they're kind of very interested in marriage and things like that. They found in this study that over a certain threshold of money spent on weddings and money spent on engagement rings, the probability of divorce goes up.
Yep.
I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think it was something like over $10,000 for a wedding. The probability of divorce goes up or something like that. And then between, if the ring is under like $500, probability of divorce goes up. But if it's over like 5,000, same thing, which I thought was a fun.
I could confirm that. I looked it up at some point when I was going through my shit, because we were trying to figure it out. And like, if you we got married, private Catholic my whole life. And like, if you heard because the priest meets with you, and they talk to you by yourself, and they talk to the ex-wife by yourself. Sure. And the first 3 questions he asked me, I got wrong. And that should have been my thing. He said, where were you baptized? Got the wrong church. I thought I was baptized there. Then he asked me, and this is another hard thing that we could talk about. He asked me, what's your dad's name? And there's a whole story to this that I didn't tell you about it, Joseph. I was saving it for this one, but I got the name of my father wrong. Another check mark wrong. And then the last question was, is there anything, excessive, or there was some sort of question like, is there anything excessive about, your current ex-wife? Now, I date angels, thank God. This motherfucking bitch, my ex-wife comes out, I go, you didn't tell him how excessive I am. She goes, I did. I was like, God damn it, I'm not going to be allowed to get married. So that was like a funny way to look at it, because I was like, I'm obsessed with this or that, or just, excessive in every single way. Right. So, that was the most recent tough one I went through. Probably the most prolific on kind of my growth as a person, though. So,
right. Kind of circling back, something really pivotal, I think you said, and I think it's really important because it's a principle. We talked about this on your show, but you said you became the truest version of yourself. And it's kind of coincidental, but my best friend, he just finished going through a divorce. And he said that he kind of halfway through the process of the separation and whatnot, he realized that he was dampening his personality. He was not being certain ways because it annoyed or frustrated or offended his ex-wife now. And recently we kind of went out and had some fun. We went to a corn maze with some friends and just kind of had a fun time out. And it was nice to see him kind of be himself again and to start feeling out who he was. So looking at your experience, and you're dating someone now, it's her birthday. So happy birthday to her.
Yes. Happy birthday, Jess.
What advice would you give to people so that they don't have to go through divorce to figure out, I need to be who I am at all times?
Yeah, man, it's so funny because like if you looked on paper, 27 years old, beautiful wife, we had 2 big families, making money, wearing the suit. I was so miserable, bro, and there was no fire there, and it all started. The issue was like, I feel like when you went on your first date with your wife, and when everybody goes on that first date, maybe first 4 or 5, you're like that shell of yourself, right? You don't want anybody to know that you're this anger issue, or pick your shit now. And I feel like for me, I always had insecurity with women. I know I'm so beautiful and charismatic, Justin, who would have thought, but I feel like I was putting her up on a pedestal almost, and you don't want those things to come out. In my case, in this new version, so we broke up, we got back together. In this new version of Scott, I really was into marijuana, right? And that was something I really hid from her until the end. And I think she was more pissed that by the time we got there to like, why wouldn't you tell me, than even the actual thought of it. Now there's differences and we could talk about that, but like, if I just would have brought that out in the beginning, it is like, it's just easier. And now what I did with Jessica, Jessica, shout out, love you, you're the best, all that good stuff. Like we've never had a fight because from day one, she got this psychopath. Like I'm out there, I'm eccentric, I have all these different needs. You know, there's gonna be this, just trying to hit everything. And like when I told her I smoked pot, I was like, oh, she's gonna shit on me. She's like, and like that's what you do. Like just it makes everything so much easier in your mind. So that would be my biggest thing is like just be who you are. And that's the hardest part, right? When we're around women, but like at least get there to be that point. And you know, and also like you have to kind of nip the issues in the butt when they come. Like there's conversations that you keep just pushing off that you think are like, oh, it'll be fine. And one example will be like going to family parties. If I have 50 people in my family and you got 40 people in your family, we both can't have 100% attendance to everything. So like these little things that like if you just bring it up, it'll probably don't let that demon sit and like come to fruition, because like then everything comes out at once. You have the big fight, and now you're just fighting over everything, and that's when you end up just like you're in that circle of fighting of like when you're fighting about the little things. That's one thing. When you're fighting about like who loves and you're gonna be this, and just it becomes a problem. So
Yeah, I love that, and I love how you said your insecurities. I've noticed that if we can just kind of master our insecurities, we can go very, very far in life, because your insecurities show up whether you like them or not anytime you interact with another person, because you're either taking steps to hide them, taking steps to compensate for them, or blatantly putting them out there and allowing the other person to kind of judge you in a sense and say, take me or leave me. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm. And even to add to that, to add to my insecurities, I think deep down, to be honest, to go like, I hope she never hears this, but let's just go there. Like we broke up. We were together from 2010, 2013. We broke up for 2 years, got back together, and I proposed to them 4 to 5 months. And the true reason, very, very selfish of me, was I thought the only reason I really got backward are all these good things, right? No, sound, good girl, good heart, all that good stuff. That's great. But the real truth was I thought I was going to end up dying or something crazy out of like I was partying hard, Justin. We were going 4 or 5 nights a week in the city. We were drunk driving to Atlantic City. Wow. Like I really thought I was gonna put myself in trouble. And like, obviously that's not the right reason. Like I tried to frame it in different ways through, this is meant to be. It's a love story. We broke up. We came back. It's the Notebook. No, bitch. It's not that. It was me. And even deeper down to even get to another level of what, like, I think I always thought that is what, you can't get anybody else. And I see a lot of guys do this with take what you can get. And like, I don't really believe in that anymore, because, a little more confident, but there's just, just by you have to test the waters a little bit. Not that, you can't meet your high school love and make it work. But for me, that was the issue.
I agree. And I think honestly that this idea, okay, here's an unpopular opinion. We need to stop watching Disney movies. And I hate saying that because I love Star Wars, except the new ones, but I think we are poisoning our minds with these perfect love stories of girl falls in love with guy falls in love with girl, and their story ends at happily ever after. But when in marriage, that's when your story freaking begins, like that's when everything else happens in life. And honestly, I think if we didn't pay as much attention to that and we looked at real relationships around us and said, hey, Joanna down the street has an awesome relationship with her husband, Mark. They're a super old couple and they're super cute when they go to the grocery store because he opens her door for her or whatever, or she opens her door for her, and look at those real life examples of people working hard on their relationships around us. I think we'd all be a lot better off.
Absolutely. And, I knew that there was going to be work to do, and there's always work to do in relationships, right? And I was so into it. The first 6-7 months, you're getting them a gift every, you're doing the flowers, and I was so in it. And then all of a sudden, I'm not a good critic. I was not a good critic of myself. So when someone would shit on me, you could come home. Well, I got anxiety by the time I got home, because I knew I would be reprimanded like I was a kid. So there was give and take on that. And, we tried therapy for 6 months, and I'm like a very pragmatic guy. You know that, right, Justin? Like right. we did for 6 months. I said, January 1 to June 30th. This is it. This is the final round here. I left the house on July 1st just because it was, we were trying, man. And, I think we're both in a better place. I'm obviously doing really well now, and I've kind of figured out some pieces of the puzzle. But that's like that big takeaway. It's just being yourself, and I think the hardest part is like really figuring out who you are. That is the hardest part. Like if people who met me 4 or 5 years ago, they would think like I hit my head or something now. And it's like, no, I'm just like I'm not nervous to play my Dungeons and Dragons,
Right.
to be a little bit more into my psychedelics, the progressive drugs, all that stuff, to be doing a podcast, to be doing
Right.
comedy, all these cool stuff that I think is me. And I think that's part of the problem is like people get very integrated into society with like, you can only do this. I have to do
Yes.
this. I have to do that. I can't
Yeah.
hang out with these people because that's like, why can't you do everything?
Yeah.
So I definitely take the yes approach nowadays more than that.
I actually, funny enough, you talk about Italy. I lived in Italy for 2 years on a religious mission for my church,
Oh,
and
wow.
one of my friends there, I guess colleagues, we were talking about music, and I don't remember how exactly the conversation came up, but either he asked me or I asked him. One of us said, "Hey, what kind of music do you like?" And when I responded, I was like, I like country sometimes, only depending on the song, and this, electronic most of the time. And he was like, "Wait, you like country? But like, how do you like electronic?" And I was like, "Because I can. Like, they're two different. Like, I can,
Because I do.
exactly." And it kind of goes back to my same friend. We were talking, and he remarked when we were playing football in junior high. We both started playing in seventh grade together, and it was around that time that he stopped reading even fictional books. I kind of kept up the habit because I like fictional books and stuff.
Mhm.
And he looks back and he says, "You know what? Like, I wonder where I would be if I had developed that skill of reading and that love of reading, so I could read books like, 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson, or Extreme Ownership by Jocko, all these personal development books." And
Absolutely.
I think we really do need to work hard not to put ourselves in these boxes and not label ourselves the jock or the nerd or whatever, and just say, "I like this." You mentioned, as a result of your divorce, you became more self-aware. You understood who you really are. So we've already talked about what sort of advice other people could employ to avoid going through that same hard thing. But what sort of things did you do, or had you thought about trying, or had you tried to become more self-aware after your divorce? And what things did you find worked really well?
And I would say that like just so everybody understands, like my mentality like is very much a hybrid of Jocko, Jordan. Like I just finished Beyond Order by Jordan Peterson, phenomenal. That's my guy. With a mix of because I love the self development. Like I have a Tony Robbins coach. I
Yeah.
believe like having a coach in every aspect of your life will accelerate where you want to go.
Right.
But at the same point of doing this for a year and a half and being super successful with things and like seeing the results, you get almost like too connected to the results. So I try to always keep in mind to people too when they start this journey. It's super exciting, right? You're like you don't want to be stuck on the rabbit hole of. So it's nice to. What I try to tell people is like you want to almost be emotionally detached from your personal development and be more attached emotionally to your soul, to your spirit. I read a lot of Carl Jung psychology books. I'm reading the Bhagavad Gita now, which is the Hindu Bible,
Mhm.
of things that are just kind of keeping in touch with my emotions because you can get lost and you don't want to get addicted. For me, I would go from being addicted to drinking or something crazy to being addicted to self-development. Anything is too much. You could drink too much water and get sick,
Mhm.
right? Justin, I don't even know what you were asking. I just totally went off
No,
on the tangent.
I freaking
Shit.
love that.
God damn it.
I'll ask my question in a second. Emotionally attached from your personal development, and I think that's a really great way of articulating something that I was kind of trying to say, but I couldn't quite figure out how, with the questions about avoiding, or at least understanding who you are when you're dating and things like that, trying to form relationships. I, like you, had similar problems of putting the girl on the pedestal and making her this kind of untouchable thing, and in a way that made me really desperate so much that I would reshape myself in unhealthy ways in order to keep the relationship alive. And I see you nodding,
Mhm.
so you understand what I mean. And I think this emotional detachment is really, it's counterintuitive, but it's super insightful because it turns every one of us into scientists rather than saying, "I feel that this is right." We say, "What does the data say? The data says this, so this is what I'm going to do." The
Exactly.
data.
You're nailing it, Justin. Like, let me add the second piece of that. It's being emotionally detached in a way where you are I'm sitting here and something goes on at work, right? I'm getting angry. So instead of what I would do is you let instincts go. And usually we think instincts are good. Instincts are not. Sometimes, if you're getting chased by a lion, you would run. But most of the time in modern age, you don't want to go with your instincts. So instead of getting angry and letting the feelings control, what I can do now, or what I could do on most of my days, is I let that feeling sit and I could sit with it and I observe the feeling, because I'm aware that Scott and anger are two separate things. This is a triggered emotion that's happening from something going on. More of that. I would say I'm more of the anxiety type guy than the angry guy, but both feelings are like both of my issues. So I can now just by that whole, just saying that, right, makes me feel better. And that's what happens in your brain. It ends up, the serotonin goes up and you end up actually getting calmer. And I had to do this with my stage fright. So I went, that's another hard thing we talk about. So like, it was funny. That's why I was so happy. I knew you were going to ask that question. I was like, I've gone through a hard thing, like every couple of years of my life. And it's been like a journey. And I keep forgetting the question, Justin.
No, you're fine. I actually hadn't asked a question that time.
Okay.
Circling back, what sort of things? Well, actually, no. Shoot, I was going to say something now too. What was I going to say? Oh yes, emotionally detaching yourself.
And connected to everything. That's it. So
Yes.
being emotionally detached, but also like being emotionally detached is just knowing your feelings are there, but knowing that they're not you, and then being connected to everything, people, being grateful, all these little tricks that, you can play life hacks in your brain to just really be like really happy where you are in the moment. Cause that's all perception.
So I remembered what I was going to add to that. I heard from a guy once that he instructs his clients, I think he was in the fitness industry. He instructs his clients to never say, I am fat. Instead to say things like, I carry too much fat, or I carry too much weight, and to stop associating themselves. And I like how you connected that to emotions. Instead of saying, I am angry, you say, I am feeling anger or frustration, because that gives a lot more power to you in realizing, or even, I'm feeling stressed, which is a very ambiguous term as it is. It kind of distances you from the situation and says, this is what I'm feeling, but like, now that I'm aware of it, I can do certain things about it, and gives you a lot more power. So
Exactly.
Circling back to my other question, self-awareness. What are some of the ways that you have found better self-awareness?
Man, I love, like, self-awareness is like my favorite hobby, to be honest with you. So I was the kid that I would say maybe we were similar, people pleasing my whole life.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make everybody happy. That's like a classic guy thing, right? When you have a father, all that shit. But to the self-awareness started to come in when I started to sit down and meditate. And again, meditation, not for everybody. What I suggest people doing is type in, listen to my podcast, Cause and the Effect, and you can find it. No, just figure out something that gets you to sit with your own thoughts. You can call it sitting with, when you wake up for 20 minutes, you could call it biohacking, anything you want to do. Like for me, I like understanding everything. So I want to understand, I was looking at meditation from a scientific standpoint, from a psychological standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint. And that's what I try to do on my podcast, is like really break things down, those three spectrums. Cause not that everybody wants to know the three ways, but you're going to hit a different person if you do it. So now, there's different types of meditation. There's meditation where you have to just sit and let the breath go. And that's more for just, that's just for being anxious. I wouldn't say there's a ton of self-realizing going on. Right. But some of the work I ended up doing, which is called insight meditation, where you go back, you kind of trace back your feelings. So, that was an issue I had with women, was a super, super jealous person. I started doing this while I was married, and I ended up like totally getting rid of jealousy. Like I'm like Jessica now wants me to be more jealous. So that was like really cool. So I kind of had the proof in the pudding. Like, I don't give a shit. I'm the man. Right. But, where you had to start for me was my childhood. And there was a lot of, all these feelings that you have are, even if you do everything the right way, it's really about your parents, your environment, all that good stuff. Right. So I had a really weird upbringing that up until a couple of years ago, I did not know what happened to my father and why he did what he did. So Justin, I'll give you the big story. I will send you an article after this, because I only like talking about it because it's such a crazy thing. My father, growing up, I thought he picked up and left and didn't want anything to do with us. The truth is, my father shared my name, Scott Gazzoli, was dealing drugs with the Colombians and in the mafia at the same time, which is, so Goodfellas, that's a big no-no. Long story short, my father got caught by the FBI, ended up snitching on his father, put my grandfather in jail for the last 20 years. And my grandfather's the one who told me the story when he got out of jail a couple of years ago. So like it was just funny how all this is happening. This piece of your history, of your past, is getting brought into life as I'm starting this type of work. And it just kind of gave me like a feeling like, oh, like obviously, the studies show, Jordan Peterson, all this stuff, if you're missing a father, there's always going to be a piece of you missing. I think that's why I like to be the big brother, the father to guys, but you can't patch it up that way. You have to sometimes go backwards. That's another piece of self-development that I tell people, be careful, because listen, it's great to look in the future and don't worry about the past, but sometimes in certain situations, you have to go back and do a little digging and really kind of connect the dots to where you were feeling and why that feeling came from. So ever since I started feeling the feelings of being not enough and feeling all that stuff is just kind of dissipated, and forgiveness towards my mother for lying, because my mom was just trying doing what she thought was the best thing, right? I'm not going to tell him your dad's was in the first RICO case. Right. So that is my first real hard thing that it kind of became full circle there. As a kid growing up thinking your dad left, that's what always my mother would say. She's probably a mad mother. Your dad wants nothing to do with you. It wasn't that. It was that he was in the witness protection program, had to change his name and all that good stuff. And Justin, this is my 10-minute bit I do for comedy, and people love this because it's like a movie. So
yeah, honestly, I've never heard of anyone who is in the witness protection program. Growing up without a father, like you said, is very difficult. And honestly, in talking to the people that I do, talking to all the people that do all these hard things, I've noticed that, and we talked about this on your show, one of the similarities is that they have a good network of people around them. Often that comes in the form of a mentor, your Obi-Wan Kenobis or your, Morpheuses, things like that. Someone who it might be considered at a level above you, who is able to reach their hand down and lift you up. And as you and I know, being a man happens by someone ushering you into manhood, showing you the ropes and kind of pushing you. So as you grow up, you mentioned you had a mentor, even though you didn't have necessarily a father figure. I'm guessing you found other father figure types that kind of helped you along the way, right?
Oh yeah. Now listen, I didn't have a father, but I had the closest thing to like one of the best male figures in my life. I lived with my grandfather till he passed away. I always had, I got 8 guy cousins. We're all aged, I'm right in the middle. So we're all aged between 20 and 41. And, everybody is like, even the little brothers are a big brother in some way. And even I'm the big brother to the older brothers in this kind of space that we're talking about. Right. So it's very cool how we all can bounce each other off. But like, I would say if you're a dude, and I'm not trying to make this like a man podcast, but like, right. I think there's a primitive and natural instinct to have the like Saturdays are for the boys. I'm not saying go out and bang girls. I'm saying like go hunting do whatever you want. For me, right. It's Dungeons and Dragons. We ordered pastrami sandwiches inside. That for me is something we do once a month, and that just makes us tighter, and it gives you a sense of confidence. Like, yeah, it's all good, because at the end, if I lose everything, I got my family, and I really like when you could say that and mean it. It's like, damn, that's like that's cool. So
yeah. Not to harp too much about divorce and relationships, but I'm guessing during that time, having these relationships probably meant a lot more, because this person that you were used to relying on so much wasn't really there for you, and you still had these other people that were able to support you, right?
Absolutely. Like that one cousin who gave me that little light bulb, like, you're kind of anyway. Like, I know that's not the best advice, but like in reality, that's what he was saying. You have to remember now, I built the house, we moved in together, and I had her parents. I agreed to let her parents live with us. Ooh. So everything, yeah, but that was, I went too much. I should have spoke up, right? But 3-on-1 for every fight. So nobody knew this. And I think by that point I was just done, right? It didn't matter. But even like going through that, like my sister came out of the woodwork, like stepping up. Like my sister's a cop. And, to give you just an example, the shit I was going through, to move your stuff out of a house in New York is like $1,000, right? My in-laws they said you can only let union people come in and you can't touch anything. So they were just trying to get me to spend like $6,000 or $7,000. So I said, fuck you guys. I'm not hard. I'm just going to carry. So I was in there through divorce every day, carrying stuff back and forth to this apartment. And my sister showed up with 8 cop cars, and she was like, you guys can't do this. And my sister's like, a bad bitch, Justin. She got in my mother-in-law's face and she was like, look what you're doing to him. This is hard enough. Like, it's time to grow up. And my sister's like a 24-year-old girl at the time. For her to do that with a 60-year-old who was like, they were being spitey, it was like, that made me and her even closer. And then through like, losing a relationship, you get closer with your mother. I want to spend more time with my mom. So like, it's so weird. Everything else became better. And I'd say, like, I don't think most people react that way, but I think it's all good signs that like you made sort of a right decision. Even like when you have, my mother telling me like, I'm so proud of how you handle everything. I just take stuff like, I just want everybody to be happy. I'm not on Instagram trying to like spite people and send this thing like I'm better than that. Like, it's not like that. I just literally just want everybody to be happy. Even though some people don't always feel that way,
Yeah, I totally understand it. Kind of switching gears, I want to talk about your podcast. What led to the decision of creating your podcast? Start that story, I guess.
So to give you a little bit of idea, there was a lot of introspecting going on. And I said, right when I got divorced, this was August 2019, I said, I'm going to take the rest of the year to figure out what I want to do. So this is right when I started meditating. I went to Colombia by myself. I went to Jamaica by myself, taking these little trips and figuring out what I want to do. And I quickly realized it's connection with people. And I don't know, maybe I was probably just listening to a little bit of too much Joe Rogan as well. Comedy and podcasting kept popping up.
Right.
So I said, February, when I turned 30, February 17, 2020, I'm going to start doing comedy. I'm going to start a podcast. That was the beginning of it. Right. That was the initial idea. And then you figured out niches and you're figuring out all this stuff. And I was like, I just literally like how what I just said to you earlier was like, I just want everybody to be happy. And I feel like what is the best way for me to help people explore while expressing myself? And that's kind of what you end up getting with my podcast. Like, there's no niche, like there's a niche, right? We're trying to help others, right? But at the same point, like if I want to talk to like a chess master, I'm talking to a chess master because I'm into chess. And even like I've been surprised at how much people dig like the weird, oh Scott, I didn't know you like Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Like, let's talk jiu-jitsu. I'm like, what? So what the podcast is, it's really focused on becoming the truest version of yourself through a mix of your mind, body, and your spirit. Those three things. When I started the podcast, I was just thinking mind and body. And as I've gone through the journey, I've realized for me how much the spiritual piece is. When I think you probably sense with me, Justin, I never try to push anything on anybody. Like, I don't know shit. I know what works for me though. And I think the pie, you have to have a pie of mind, body, and spirit. And you have to pick. I would say when I started, 30% douche Scott, I was like 70% body. I want to be fit. It's about abs. And now it's like 50% spirit, honestly, and mind. And the gym has become like just the thing that I do now that, to feel good. Right. But you have to figure that out. And I'm figuring out too. So as I have the journey with people, I try to be as authentic and raw and unfiltered as possible. Like, a kid from Brooklyn, the urban spiritual guy, just talking shit to psychologists. And that's what I keep seeing pop up is I just really enjoy talking to people about the mind, like the psychology of it and the archetypes that we're talking about. That really like gets me going. And it's so funny. Check this one out, Justin. So this is one of my cousins, like the shaman of our group. This is something that you would like. The archetypes and the collective unconscious. So this book's about the explanation of why we connect with those archetypes, those heroes, those mentors. So, all the answers are here, man. So I got promoted to like a 700-page book now. So this is my homework.
That's awesome. I've been wanting to read Jung for a while. One of the hard things with the podcast is sometimes you get guests who have books and you have to read their books. Well, you don't have to, but it's always better if you read their books before the show.
Absolutely.
And whatnot.
Absolutely.
What are some of the biggest lessons you've learned from your podcast, both in terms of organization and building something, and also in terms of things you've learned specifically from your guests?
So I would say that, the balancing act, I've learned to do it pretty well, but I've also learned to really use time as my friend. I think that's the one thing I learned just from this whole process is like how important your time is. Like I used to look at like money's the most valuable commodity. No, it's your time. And if you spend it wisely, you can do everything you say. And anybody who says, I don't have the time to do something, that's what I always said to myself. Oh, I have a job. No, bitch, there's always time to do stuff. You can start waking up earlier. You could throw in an extra hour at your lunch. You could always do these different things. But I really, when I didn't realize from the guests, like how much I actually get out of these by call it like a therapy session, call it knowledge, like the neurogenesis is called in your brain. Like when you're just like learning something new, I'm learning something new every time. And that just gets me more excited. And when you start doing that, you start building momentum and starting something from the bottom up and like it being yours. I never had that. I always took the easier way out of like, oh, I'd be a great number 2, number 3. I don't gotta own the company. I'll just make the money. And that's what I do for my day job. And I was like, why can't I own something, where it's really mine and to, where I used to be like embarrassed to talk about it. And now I'm like, people bring it up to me and I'm like, holy shit, like this is an exciting thing. But the people that what you can do with technology now and the people you can meet, like I always thought about just have a podcast. Nobody has to listen. You can just sit and talk I can just talk to you and just like, we're getting something out of it. Like just, you get out of it, the connection and being in the same world as people. Like I really thought nobody was into this stuff. Like I was sitting there like, we're a kid from Brooklyn. Everybody's into pasta, The Sopranos and all this stuff. That's great. But there's so much more to life. And like, I have a friend coming here who's she's one of the astrology girls that came on the podcast. She's coming in next week to hang out with me and Jessica. You have, my friend Raj, who's a coach in London, coming here to me. It's like, you can make all these different connections that like, just give your life color. And that's like what I've realized. Well, take the money, take the results, take all that stuff. Like my connection with people is what gets me going. And that's like when I'm going to look back when I'm dying, like, wow, that was some cool shit. That kid, Justin Lewis, it's a cool motherfucker.
I have to agree there sometimes, and this might sound really bad. Sometimes I hate doing podcasts because I'll have a specific episode or interview with a guest right before I go to work. And the guest is all talking about how kind of living your life and doing all these really cool things. And then I got to go and fulfill my duties to pay bills and things and take care of my family.
I just ran from that. I literally just ran here to do it. And like, I think that you have to play the game as much as you want to. Like, listen, I could literally quit my job right now, but then I won't be getting my $10,000 a month, Justin. I can't be watching Venom with Jessica. Then like, you have to pick and choose like this game. And I think, the way that you and I are doing it, like you're working your job, you're doing your responsibilities, you're a husband, I got the company. And then just just trying to chip away at this, that's even more commendable than somebody who just says, screw it, I'm going to burn the boats. Because like to juggle everything, it gives you, I would have made a hell of it, an administrative assistant, Justin. Let me tell you, it would have been great just scheduling stuff. Because now I see the skills that I have from scheduling and calendar, all that stuff, like reaching out, like it works, it transfers over. And that's the cool part about everything you do. Like everything is related to everything.
Yeah, I agree. So just curious, where do you see the podcast going as far as your desires on growing it, shaping it, things like that?
So, like we said earlier, it was supposed to be focused on the mind, body, and spirit. And like, I there's still going to be fitness enthusiasts come on. Like I just had my good friend, Justin Martellini, IFBB Pro come on, all this good stuff. But like, for me, I do the fitness to like, just throw it in, because what I saw when you get emails from people who like, oh, I was meditating and loved your wellness, but then I didn't know if you do hypertrophy training, it helps with this. It's like just trying to connect people, because I want to really just expand people's minds in every way. Very similar to like, I still remember the first podcast I ever listened to. It was Rogan, and he had this guy, Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock on, who were talking about geology and the rocks and all this stuff. And I was like, my mind was blown. Like, it was like, I was like, how didn't I know that this type of thing existed? So that's what I try to go for, is like, if I could add like 1% to a person's life, like if I change the route of somebody 1% on their journey on the boat, right, that changes the entire trajectory of their life. And hopefully, we can do it by a couple percent and they can kind of focus. So I would say that the goal of the podcast is to always be me, always take flavors. Like we've been rejecting some sponsors, not because like I'm too good, just because I want something that I could really get behind and really talk about. I don't want to be the guy, we'll be right back with Justin. Now let me tell you about this pen that was made in Brazil. That's I don't know. Right. But it's always going to be me. It's always going to be the truest expression of myself. And obviously, I would love it to be a full-time gig at one point. And I would say for anybody that is at the bottom of something and you're comparing yourself to, how me and Justin are at this ground level of the Joe Rogan at the top, right? You can't look at life that way, because, you get what you put in. So the work me and Justin have put in is multiples less than what Rogan put in or what anybody did for anything. And I think that's the issue people have, is like, well, why am I not there? And it's the story, an archetype, in the movies of the fool becoming the king, the wise king. And you have to be willing to be the fool for a little bit, and go through the hard times. And I love the people that started with me this first year, and I want to bring everybody up. And I've realized, like, when you stop worrying about the results, like, and you're just sitting in the moment, like we're here, Justin, like we're here in the moment. We're being mindful of each other. Like we get along. Like that's going to be, this makes my whole night. And I can be, now Jessica gets her all happy birthday dinner. But, when you do stuff the right way, when you stop, what I've learned, like the path is the process. Like it's not about the end result. It's about the actual purpose. Like the meaning of life is life itself. And if you're just running through it, trying to make money till you retire, you're trying to run to get this one, even run to get that one. You're just chasing. It's
funny. That makes me think of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Are you familiar with that story? Mm-hmm. So for those of you who aren't, this alien race creates this supercomputer, and they ask it, what's the meaning of life, the universe, and everything? And it's like, I don't know. I'm going to make a supercomputer that can actually answer that question. So it spends like thousands of years to build a computer that can then spend thousands of years to answer that question. And after thousands and thousands of years, it responds to this alien race. It says the answer to life, the universe, and everything is 42. And I always thought that was just a cheeky answer, right? Until, you're scrolling on Instagram, as sometimes you do. I don't know about you, but I do sometimes. And I saw, one of my favorite things on my personal profile is to go past to get caught up on all the posts and just find new stuff. And one of these posts showed that scene, I think from the movie, and it had a little caption, and it said, 42 wasn't just a number in a specific coding language. 42 is it's kind of the designator for the asterisk, which, if you're familiar with code, the asterisk is a symbol sometimes used to mean anything, right? So you can go into Google and you can type when asterisk goes to bed, and it'll bring up all sorts of results, putting in anything, not the word anything, but any result within that asterisk in the search. So really, the computer was saying life is what you make of it. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so smart. You know what I mean? Because it's true. You only find meaning by trying to find meaning, which is probably smarter than I'll ever be, because I don't know if I fully understand that sentence.
But Justin, that's like, isn't that the fun part? Like the meaning of life is what you give it. Mm-hmm. Right. And this is like the cool part of, a lot of people shit on Jordan Peterson. I happen to be like a fanatic, I would say. Like you could, like, because I lived both extremes of that life. I lived life in the nihilistic way. Like when I broke up with my girl the first time, Justin, I was doing the yellow cocaine from the cartel. The cartel brought me the cocaine. I was trying to and I just, nothing mattered. My uncle died from brain cancer. It was this whole thing. And I was like, it doesn't matter. I've seen that side, and I pushed it to the limit of that side. I was like, what, there's no answer there. And now I'm trying this side. I can tell you there's a lot more color. There's a lot more healthy. There's a lot more connection with people. There's a lot more of the answers on this side than on that side of women, drinking, booze, all that fun stuff. I look back and now I'm like, what? You wasted all this money. You were living off of instinct, and like from a very spiritual standpoint, you're living on your basic primitive things of sex, anger, worthiness. Like I try to remove all those things of, they call them the bottom three chakras, which is, there's the food, women, and then your worthiness. Like those three things, like you don't want to play with those, because if you're playing instinctual games with that, you'll just be an animal,
Yeah. I especially don't like talking about worthiness, because it often, in my opinion, it brings up the word deserve. I deserve this, which I think is a very useless word, because I'm a Christian, and from a religious perspective, at least in the Christian realm, Christ did everything. So what do we deserve? Because he did everything for us, so we don't deserve anything. From an evolutionary perspective, everything we are is owed to everyone who's come before us. So I don't know that we deserve anything in that realm. And I think, at least when you look at it this way, when I look at it this way, it helps me get a lot more gratitude, because it allows me to look at a life that is so much more abundant than what I quote unquote deserve. right? Going back to that nihilistic viewpoint, and instead look at the world and say, this is what I have. I'm so blessed and lucky to have all of this, because there are people who don't, whether they deserve it or not, whether I deserve it or not. This is what I have. And I'm very lucky and grateful to be where I am right now. Not to say that I don't want more, or can't grow or whatever, but for me, at least, it really helps change my worldview to be one of gratitude in realizing that, you know what, I do stand on the shoulders of giants, you know?
Absolutely, man. And that's like, that's beautiful that you're saying that. Cause again, that's all Jordan Peterson stuff. Like that's duality, right? You can look at life like it has no meaning and life is all suffering and I'm not taking responsibility and I'm going to be a victim. I'm going to have to make you wear a mask and all that stuff. Right. Or you look at it the other way and then you bear the burden of suffering. Like, yeah, you're a human being, bitch. You're going to suffer. That's like saying, I want to play basketball, not dribble the ball. Right. This is what you signed up for. So it's either make the best of it. My cousin is a double major psych, double major philosopher. We were fighting about this on Sunday because he has a very nihilistic view. And my point that I think I got to was like, so you're just going to sit and be miserable about it? Like that's the best option that you have? Because you're going to disconnect from people. You're going to not, you have to have belief in something. You need to believe. Like, if you don't, then your life is going to be dampened, but with something, you know, take your pick. So,
man, that is just right to my soul. I'm a very, again, religious, but in general, I'm a very faithless person. So I struggle to have faith. I need to see the proof in order to believe. You know, I'm not very trusting of people generally. And that sentence, you got to believe in something, just speaks to my soul. Before we transition to kind of the end of the show, we got to talk about Carnage. So anyone listening, spoiler alert, probably. I don't care much about spoilers because if it's a good enough story, I'll still go watch it, listen to it, or read it. But give us your take on Carnage and what you thought about that.
Everybody buckle the fuck up. So to preface this, I am diehard Venom, diehard Carnage, my favorite guy. I have 3 Carnage shirts. I went with 4 dudes, 4 Ginzos from Brooklyn wearing the dorky shirts. One had Spider-Man, one had Venom. Carnage, the character, Woody Harrelson. Very well done, all that good stuff. The writing done by Sony is atrocious. Justin, the way that he dies, the person who actually kills him, can I just tell you, Justin?
Tell me. I'd be happy.
Do you remember the first Venom? Ish. Okay. It's Tom Hardy's girl, Anne, starts dating the guy, the doctor. There's a doctor guy who helps him. Okay. That dude pours gasoline and lights a fire on Carnage, and that's how he dies. That's how they kill him. Yeah. That's a spoiler alert for everybody. They ruined such a great character that spoke, like, the story of Carnage is he splits from Woody Harrelson. Woody Harrelson goes to jail, and then they just repeat it on repeat. They kill him off. Does nothing for they basically made him like a small bad in these movies, and now he's done. And now I will also say that Andy Serkis directing it, you can tell this dude was Gollum for all those years, because 40 minutes of the movie is Venom and Eddie fighting with each other. Swear to God. So I counted it. I rewatched it, 40 minutes of that. And there's a 12-minute scene of Venom at a masquerade party as actual Venom dancing. I don't need real Venom dancing, bro. I don't need real Venom dancing. So in total, I would give it, like, in reality, like a 4 out of 10. Not good. End credit scene, fantastic. The best end credit scene we've gotten. But everything before that, like, it's an hour and 30-minute runtime. 40 to 50 minutes could have been wasted. Like, great with the origin story. They did interesting stuff. And like Carnage, I know that, like, this is what they do. I'm sure you've seen this, Justin. Like, when there was pure, like, in the 80s and 90s, just bad dudes, you can't have that anymore in 2021. So everybody has to have a love interest, or you have to be a friend. Like, I'm just hurt. No, you're not Darth Vader, bitch. Carnage is Carnage. Carnage is supposed to be murdering people, and that was it. They make him have a love interest. They make him, just like he says at the end to Eddie, I just want to be your friend. That's not the Carnage story, man. So I don't know if they're going to end up doing the multiverse in the MCU and bring him back and maybe be like a different version of Carnage, because I guarantee you Marvel's like, please kill him. And I bet you Tom Hardy said the same thing. And here's the interesting thing. I was going to blame the writers, and Tom Hardy wrote all the stuff for Venom, which is probably the issue. So he actually did most of the writing that you see with him and himself, which isn't like, I don't think they don't do that in the comics, right? They don't make Venom like this other, like I get even in the first one, you want to make it introduce him, but like they made it like the Odd Couple almost. It's really rough, really rough.
See, I think, like you said, people are misunderstanding villains, and I've noticed that the best villains are, going back to archetypes, they usually fall in a few archetypes. One is kind of this force of nature. They're not necessarily evil, but they move. Thanos can kind of be considered, he's kind of halfway this, but halfway another one. Maybe Ultron might be a better force of nature, or gosh, I can't think of a better. Well, like Jurassic Park, all the animals, all the dinosaurs might be in this category. It's this huge adversary, force of nature, not really bad intent. And then there is the convinced they're doing right, but are very wrong. This is Thanos, right?
Yep.
Definitely Thanos. And then I think the best villains are, they understand the depravity that they're perpetrating, and it fuels them. So this would be the Joker, and he's also somewhat like a force of nature. Like you can't understand the Joker. He just goes. But then you can't have anti-hero villains. That just doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. And like, even with, I would say with Thanos, even the Joker, there's that speck of inspiration from them and what they say. You're like, oh, I kind of agree. Like, exactly. like I really could burn down the Manhattan and with like 3 swipes. Yeah, but like with you can just tell that like where they're like, I knew it from, they didn't want to say like Carnage is supposed to be like, kill 17 people. He raped this kid. He killed this. Like they just said, oh, he just killed his parents. Like that. They really copped out. And I get it. It's a different age, but like, just all you got to do is copy the comics, and like not in one comic does he get burned with gasoline and get lit on fire. And what he does was he lights him, and then Venom ends up, like ripping off the red Carnage and eating him. And I'm like, where are you guys getting this from? Like, I don't even know who wrote that. So I think it is a lot of Hollywood, but I'm so pissed because you can't find that on YouTube. If anybody is actually listening to like by this point, and we didn't ruin it for you, don't listen to any of the YouTube reviews because they're all lying and saying it's good. Like it's not true. It's really not true. I'm pretty honest, right, Justin?
Yeah.
I was so hyped. I was telling you last week how excited I was.
Yeah, it really makes me sad that, because I was expecting you to be like, yeah, it's so awesome, you got to go see it. And,
dude, Carnage, if you like, there's like the 9-minute Carnage intro where you see him turn, and they did it so good. It's that dry red look, and he's just murder. Awesome. They should have just done that for an hour and just let him just destroy everything. Because what they do is Shriek is his love interest in the comics, but Carnage never has a weakness to sound. That's the point of Carnage. You're supposed to be a better version of Venom. They make sound be the victim, and his girlfriend screams. So it's like, bro, you're not making any sense here. So they f it all up.
Huh. Well, hopefully, whatever comes from the Marvel content, whether from Disney or otherwise, is much better. But Scott, it's been amazing having you on the show. Before we let you go, why don't you tell people how they can reach out to you, support you, and see what you're doing?
Of course, brother. Anybody just Google Cause and the Effect podcast, Instagram, Cause and the Effect podcast, or causeandtheeffectpodcast.com. You could email me any questions. I'm big into mental health and helping people. It's Suicide Prevention Month, mental health month last month. Cause and the Effect podcast at gmail.com. Always happy to listen. If you want to try to get your mind, body, your spirit right, I don't sell nothing. I'm no coach. I am just a vessel to help everybody kind of get a little better, man.
Excellent. And of course, we do need to give our audience some action items. So here's the list I came up with. Number 1, emotionally detach yourself from strategic things. So not everything, but definitely some things. Number 2 is be your truest self today. Number 3 is figure out what you really, really want to do. So when you were talking about your podcast, I think if people figure out what makes them feel exactly how you feel about your podcast, that's what they should do. Number 4, stop worrying about results and just be in the moment. Do you want to add to that list in any way?
I would say that just with the disconnection thing, because I don't want people disconnected too much, but try to connect with yourself first in the morning, because that is kind of the way I look at my day. The first couple minutes of your life, don't go on your phone. Don't wake up, start chit chatting with your girl. Go to a room, sit with your thoughts, and just like connect with your feelings. And like Justin's saying, sit with some gratitude, sit with some connectiveness, forgive if you got to forgive, let that shit go, because life is just too short to be sitting here worrying about this BS.
Excellent. Well, Scott, it has been an amazing conversation with you. And hopefully we didn't ruin Carnage for anyone, but I think Sony did that probably.
Yeah, we didn't ruin that.
But thank you so much. You have an amazing day, and make sure you tell your girl happy birthday from the Heart Thing Podcast.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you, man. Seriously, love the work you're doing.
Thank you. Have a good one. Thank you guys for listening to today's show. Thank you for sticking in there. I know that the intro was not like it is normally. I'm actually still a little bit sick. So hopefully that didn't disrupt your listening of this podcast at all. But thank you guys so much for listening to the show. Reach out to us on Instagram at The Heart Thing Podcast. Make sure you follow us. Get extra bonus content as well. We'll be back on Monday for another awesome show. Until then, guys, keep doing hard things because you will overcome average.